Yesterday, we went over and visited with ones in the Northcraft a little while, and the reason for our going up there was because we were concerned about an individual. One of the reasons, rather, this was the sole reason, but one of the reasons. And we felt like that individual was deeply troubled. And yet every time we talked to that person on the phone, well, he didn't appear to be that way. And yet the reports we were getting, it sounded like he was, if you can understand it. Well, after talking with the individual, we realized that, or we began to become aware that things are happening that we're not sure should be happening, or maybe you're not aware that they're happening, which makes me feel like you need to work on getting your mind into your vehicle more. Now, let me get off a little bit. I mean, because I'm not sure I'm saying what I'm trying to say. When we walked in, there were some who had been sunning, and according to their skin, they look like they sun regularly, which means
some of them are getting pretty good suntan.
It means that they do that regularly. I also called Southcraft and talked to an individual, and he said, I said, do you have somebody else on the line? He said, no, they're all out sunning. Okay, now, why is it, the question came into my mind, why is it you can sun regularly, but you can't work on getting your mind into your vehicle regularly? Okay, and the question what came into my mind was that you like the sun.
That's right.
You like to get a nice tan so you can appear to be a nice tanned individual when you're seen by other humans or other people. In other words, you're concerned about your vehicle appearance more than the task that you have that is more important than getting your vehicle tanned. Now, we know you're tanning because we said you get your vitamin D. Well, why are you so concerned about your vitamin D? Why are you not concerned about getting your mind into your vehicle?
Well, also, I want to point out that we did not recommend or make a procedure for regular sunning. Are you all aware of that? We said it's okay to sit out once in a while for 30 minutes. But we find that okay to sit out once in a while for 30 minutes has turned into an excuse for regular sunning. And some appeared almost as if they're trying to get a tan. You know, shorts on a day that it was fairly cool, and the legs were already getting tan.
That's how cool it was to us.
And,
which we don't wear sweaters that often.
And it looked like they were reverting to Lakeway. It looked like they were tuning back into when we had you doing some sunning at retreat, when we had a place at Lakeway. And that the little bit of a suggestion that we made about getting a little vitamin D once in a while had turned into something altogether different, an opportunity to have 30 minutes of sunbathing any day the sun was worth bathing in. And the point is, how can something as insignificant as that become so on the front of your mind that you would remember to go do it with any regularity, when things that are really critical and important to our getting out of here, like getting enough mind in to have better regular control. Excuse me, go ahead.
Now, the thing that we found out was that people, when they're with, like some individuals, when they're alone with another individual, can be nasty to that person. I mean, this is the word that was used. And when that person who was being nasty to, who was the recipient of the person being nasty to, goes to somebody else to say that that was a breakage, then this person who says, the person says to him, I didn't see it, so I don't know what happened, so I can't find the note. Which isn't fair to that person who is being treated nasty to when nobody else is around. Can you see what we're saying? Now, to hear something like that, after what we have asked you to do,
to hear that level of action being taken place and that level of responses. Go ahead.
Right, it discourages us because we think you all are trying so hard in every way.
We take for granted that you're trying so hard that we know your vehicles will continue to try to give you trouble because it gives you an opportunity to do your task. But we do think that you are trying so hard that you have the control to restrain yourself from slipping into that kind of participation of talk among yourselves.
We think, have you ever gone, have you ever gone into a store with somebody and you were talking to that person thinking they were walking along with you, and you turn around and they're not even in sight, but maybe they stopped off someplace else to look at something? Well, in a sense, this is what we do. When we give you a task to do, we go on about pushing ahead.
Thinking you're up with it.
Thinking that you're staying behind it. And then when we find out things like this, we look around, well, where are they? What's happened, And we couldn't, I couldn't understand why T&O couldn't make much progress recently on things. Things don't seem to be happening. And you've got to always remember that if you don't do your assignment, then we don't move ahead. It's as simple as that. If you enjoy sitting out in the sun and getting a nice tan and going around the craft and just being just a regular human in a craft like you have, walking one foot on the gutter and one foot on the curb, if you're content doing that, then that's your choice. But we hope that you will choose not to be content with that. And let's get this show on the road. It's the thing that concerns me the most. This is just one incident, but we've heard other incidents with different people just recently. Like, you don't take our words. Like, you don't say, if you ask somebody a question and they start talking about, they don't directly answer the question, you don't say to them, that's not what I asked you. You're not answering my question. Now, Link says that to you to get your attention, to get you to stay within the lines of what we're talking about. But Link doesn't mean it in a way to get back at you, to put you down, or, in other words, we can do it, but you can't. It's as simple as that. Because we're in the position now, we don't like it. And we don't want you to like it. So therefore, we don't even want you to pick up that characteristic, because it is not a characteristic of the next level. It is something that we have to do at this time in order to get things moving. And we hope that we will be able to drop it soon. But if you're picking up those kind of characteristics, then you are picking up bad habits, and we don't want you to do it. We want you to, the more you get your mind in, the more tender you become toward each other, the more kind you become toward each other. You don't become not sarcastic, but nasty, or put each other down. you feel badly because you have to say something to them that will correct them in some way.
Yes, you say it with real
Kindness.
reluctance when you have to say something. It's because you don't want to say something.
And if you've noticed that you have hurt somebody because you said something, what you should observe on their face or their countenance or something, you should immediately feel so badly about it that you want to let them know that you didn't mean it the way it was.
You do whatever it takes to rectify it. In other words, and this is like two different ways this can happen. One is you slipped and lost control for a moment, which should be happening far less than it's happening. Now, we can understand you're dealing with things, but to lose control in upsetting your class or in relationship to a classmate, that should be not happening nearly as frequently as it happens. If you, on a rare occasion, did find that you had slipped, then you should immediately feel so bad about it that you rectify the situation right on the spot with an apology and making the fact that you slipped, making them know that that is a greater offense that has occurred at that moment than anything they might have done to so-called provoke your slipping. Do you see what we're saying? You follow that? In other words, if your vehicle sees somebody do something and it seems to provoke a bad response in you, the moment you should be so sensitive now to your own bad responses that the moment it comes out or it seeps out even a little bit, you should see it as such a major thing that whatever they did could have to be minor in comparison. And you should let those present immediately know that you feel like you have been the major committer of trouble here, because you're upsetting the craft, you're upsetting others, you're engaging in a very low vibration. No matter what they do, we couldn't tell you how many thousands of times we have, and I mean literally thousands of times, we have said that no one can say anything that can justifiably provoke a poor response, right? And that anytime they say something, whether it seems to be criticism or anything else, that you simply have to take it as something to examine in yourself to see whether or not the shoe fits, and not to respond negatively. If we can understand your vehicle having a little agonizing moment of that adjustment of not responding, or the agonizing moment of changing it around, refusing to see that as a provocation and deciding to see it as an opportunity to examine yourself. But we can't see you're still giving in to going ahead and blurting out some poor response. Or if you fall on your face by a poor response, those falling on the faces should be so distant that when it does occur, you see it as a major thing that you must correct. Now, some of you have to make the adjustment, and I don't want to forget the other thing I want to say, but some of you have to make the adjustment to realize that your vehicle may have been in the habit of saying things and been around people who would take those things lightly, so that it wasn't any major thing for you to say. Let's say that someone could say cutting remarks, that they grew up in a house where everybody made cutting remarks. And so cutting remark was no big deal. You see what we're saying? And the person really didn't mean much by it. It just came out because it was kind of like a playful fencing. Not that I could ever stand that kind of fun, but some vehicles do grow up in that kind of environment. But you have become so sensitive that anything that has a questionable vibration with it is disturbing to you. Now, I can't help but wonder why it is that those who give out that kind of of questionable vibration are also the same ones who seem to be so sensitive when others give it out, but insensitive when they are giving it out. So that sensitivity has got to turn around and be a sensitivity toward what you give out instead of just sensitive toward what others give out. You've got to have a kind of almost insensitivity to what they give out as a form of protection. Protecting yourself, and first of all realizing that you really can't judge what they were doing, and knowing that they may be dealing with something at the moment that you should feel sorry for them for having to deal with it rather than condemning them for it. Do you follow that? Now, there's another thing on this same line. Someone may say something, and they may not be vibrating anything at all. But to your ears, because of where you are at the moment, you may be overly sensitive and be off, so to speak, and therefore what they say has hurt you or has offended you. Now, let's say that I say something to Sam Odie, and I'm not feeling any hostility, I'm not feeling anything at all that I'm aware of. And I said, but Sam Odie may have just gone through something that weakened her at that moment, and she may take my words to mean something that are offensive to her, seem to hurt. I should be keen enough that I can recognize in Sam Odie that what I have said has caused this response, even though, from my point of view, it may not be justified. You see what I'm saying? But I still want to say, oh, for heaven's sakes, what did I say? I certainly didn't want to say it. I've got to say it another way, because I do not want to think it. That at least lets Sam Odie know that where I'm coming from, and that it was not my intention. Now, this has to be sincere. I can't cover up my ill after I've done it. You know, this can't be a planned strategy of, well, I got my anger off, and now I'll try to smooth it up. Even though if I do accidentally get the anger expelled, I have to immediately recognize that it is me who has been the fool, and let them know that I recognize that I have been the fool, and I did not want to do that. Now, this isn't new. We have talked to you all about this. And if you're playing according to what we consider the present rules of the game, there should be no trouble existing between individuals or nasty things happening. And and any that might be, they should be so brief and so immediately reconciled because of their recognition of what mistake took place, that there would be no lingering disharmony or a bad feeling towards each other. Now, in other words, we feel like we're really behind when there is lingering bad feeling. And we know that there are some who still can't get past that. Now, and here again, be only concerned with your own lingering in this regard. Don't be concerned about anybody else's. Trust that they will be concerned about it if it is lingering within them. But I've got to go back to the sunning thing just for a moment before we leave it. Because if I'm not mistaken, after we had the Lakeway Experience retreat, and we all got quite a bit of sun that summer, and T and Do even did more research on the sun, and we began to think, we've overdone it, and we don't want that kind of sunning. When we gave you an okay label 30 minutes, in our minds it was, we don't want anybody out at any one time in excess of 30 minutes. It wasn't an assignment to go get 30 minutes of sun. It was that we would like for you to have a little exposure, a little bit of exposure to some sun to get a little vitamin D in that way, but not to exceed 30 minutes. But it became translated as a period of time that we could sun, and it even was as often as we choose. You know, even on a daily basis it was.
There was something that was just recently about the vitamin D. What was it? You already have the procedure on that. You all remember what it was?
Well, one thing I remember is you clarified that you could be fully dressed and still get the vitamin D.
Right. In other words, you don't have to sun. We don't want anybody sunning.
Nobody's sunbathing. We don't want anybody sunbathing. But we don't want you just white as a sheet. And I guess we were a little concerned because Northcrest seems to be kind of dark sometimes, and we're not as concerned now because the season's changing. But while it was so damp and wintry in Austin, we couldn't shake off all the little bugs that were causing sniffles and sore throats and runny noses.
And Tall Lodi was in shorts yesterday, and he had such a bad cough when he was here last. And in my mind, he would be like, this is good pneumonia weather. Because it's cool at night, it gets hot in the daytime, and you go from warm clothes to summer-type clothes, and then it gets cool when the sun goes down, and then you may stay in the shorts or whatever you're on, and you get chilled, and that hot and cold can cause
That's right. Your body gets a little feverish when you get sun for like a strong sun. Even 30 minutes is like too much, as far as I'm concerned. Alex Odie had just come in when we came in and his face was purple because of intense sun for that whatever period of time he was sunning. And I know that his skin was purple because his skin turns purple with not very much sun at all. Now I'm sure that purple fades and the pink will fade and it ends up being tan. But the point is, it disturbed me because I know that that's not healthy for his skin to get that way. And I know that it's not healthy for Kadoti to get too much sun because his skin is very, very tender to having trouble with the sun. So Kadoti should be getting a very minimum of sun. And yet his legs were pretty tan and his face and arms were pretty tan. So it looked like the instruction about getting a little vitamin D had turned into unconsciously a regular scheduled event.
Well, now we're back to where I started. What is it that makes you all do that so faithfully and not practice this one thing that is so extremely important right now, as to get more mind into the vehicle and to treat each other as members of the next level and not as people that you have lived with for 8 or 9 years, which is old hat type thing. And it is something you've got to consciously do. Now, also, getting back to the sun tanning, vitamin D is an accumulating vitamin. You store it in your liver. You do not get deficient in it. Like you could get your daily dose of, if you stay out in the sun go out as much as 3 times in a week, you would probably get all that you need.
Not even 30 minutes if you're just out in the sun a little bit.
And we did not say to sun. We stress, now that Stan Modi mentioned that, we stress that we don't want you sunny. That you can sit out in the sun and get all that you need. And so...
but that didn't mean go sit in the sun for 30 minutes. See,
but the point I'm trying to get across also, we're trying to get the sunny but what I want to know, why is it, if you have enough blood into your being, how can you choose to sit out in the sun regularly over treating your classmates in the most right way? So therefore it means that your vehicle, your mind is not in your vehicle if you want to sit out in the sun regularly. It's as simple as that. I never find time to sit out in the sun. The only sun I get is when I'm outside walking.
Walking from the car to the store. That's all.
And that's all.
Sun we get.
And when I'm back in the craft, I'm working on other things. And it never dawns, I never think about going out there, even though I know that I should. You see what I'm saying? So
Not
somewhere
should.
your options are
You don't need
over.
the sun.
I don't mean sun, but I mean get some sun. Like I read in a book where the sun is good for your eyes, and I feel like my.
But don't you think we even get enough sun, you and I?
I don't feel like I'm deprived of it.
No, I think we get adequate sun just by the going out that we go out. I think we get adequate sun. Neither one of us are pale and deprived of D.
But the most important thing that it's like television. If there's a television show on, you make a point to see it, right? Don't you plan your strategy so you're free at that time, right? Okay, and isn't that a human thing? What if you, and you're ready to consume? Boy, you always figure out how to work that in, don't you? In other words, however, it's an assigned thing, but the important thing, doing these things are an assigned thing. It's something that you should do 24 hours a day. It isn't something that you do whenever you think about doing it.
Yeah.
So some effort on your part has to be exerted in that way in order to accomplish it, in order to do it. Just like the effort that you exert to make sure you're free when Magnum PI comes on, or the 18, or whenever your experiment is ready, or whenever you have a time when you think your vehicle needs to go out and sit in the sun. In other words, you've exerted the effort to do those things, but have you really exerted enough effort to do what we have asked you to do in this way, which is extremely important. You can't get more mind into your vehicle in any other way but this way. You cannot just say anything to a classmate and it be your mind doing it. If you are talking to your vehicle, if your mind is talking to another mind, it couldn't possibly say anything that could hurt somebody. And if you say something that can hurt somebody, that should go off in your mind so strongly. Uh-oh, look who's talking. Vehicle, you just be quiet now and exert the effort to get your mind to figure out how to say something to that individual using your next level mind. Now, I would like to see this take priority over Magnum PI, sunning, consuming, out-of-craft tasks. If all of you had an out-of-craft task, and they told you that if you come into this office and you say one thing that is ugly to somebody, or rude or sarcastic, you're going to be fired. Would you do it? Not if you wanted to keep your job, you would. You would make a point to not do it. If Sam Modi went to her out-of-craft task and they told her that anytime you are rude to a customer, and we get one report from the customer that you are rude to them, you're going to be fired, do you think somebody would be rude to that customer? No, she wouldn't. So how is it that you all can't take this particular thing as saying, of course you may not be able, there's no punishment.
Well,
In other words, there is a punishment in a sense because
Well, and to me, I can't understand how you can be sick at your stomach when someone else does something nasty to you, but not sick at your stomach when you're vibrating something badly. In other words, you should be more sensitive to your own bad vibrations than to others. You should be protecting yourself and realizing you can't judge what they would say that could make you sick at your stomach, that you don't have the capacity to do it. When I feel, and I don't think for a moment that Lynx doesn't still have to exercise these things constantly, this kind of control. But when I feel that I am off and that I could see something or say something to T that is wrong, it immediately makes me sick at my stomach. And I also am aware that if I go so far as to say something to T about it, that the amount of how sick my stomach is has quadrupled, plus I make her sick at her stomach. And I don't like to be sick at my stomach. And even if I hold it in myself and try to hide it from T, I've got the lingering nausea because of my own poor vibration. And I have learned that I don't really find any pleasure in hanging and letting that nausea linger. So I'll desperately do whatever it takes to get my mind on something else, to change the vibration, to do anything to correct my own vibration. But it seems that some of the class still at times are extremely offended by others' seeming poor vibration, but have not yet become sensitive enough to be nauseated by their own poor vibration and to get rid of it before it lingers. Now, this doesn't mean that you can take this and say, well, I just can't do that, and I must be in such bad shape that I might as well leave the class or anything. All of you have difficulties to deal with on a regular basis. You couldn't do your task if you didn't, because your task is to come in and take animal vehicles that will deal you these difficulties so that you can send that out to the world. But in the process, you should have had enough experience now how to do that and move on, or to contain things, control things enough that at least you're not polluting the air around you and the whole crap, and you're trying to get rid of your own pollution as quickly as you can. Even though it's true, at times, even with your best effort, it may take a little while to get rid of it. Do you follow? But you've got to apply your best effort at getting rid of it. Because if you do not, you're not doing your task. That opportunity for doing your task just went right out the window. And in the meantime, T and Bill are on down the grocery store aisle and left you back someplace looking at something, and we don't even know that you're back there. We think that you are right
We
behind
have to
us.
come back and get them and spur them on and show you how to do it. But the thing of it is, you've got to remember that we're not talking about just what comes out of your mouth totally. It's when you all are at retreat, you aren't the same here at retreat as you are back in your craft. There's a different set of code for some reason.
Or when Lynx is with you.
Or when Lynx is with you. I noticed that very strongly yesterday. Yesterday, when we went into the North Craft, everybody was very pleasant.
Yes, don't take us wrong, will you?
No, they were very pleasant, but they were not the same as they are in
That's true.
retreat.
That's true.
There was a strong contrast, and it leans toward more of a humanness. Now you all examine yourself, not each other, but examine yourself and see what the difference is. Because we want you to correct it. You're still not as bad of a human. You're a very refined human back there. But you don't want that difference.
I think that we're not even saying that it's conscious. I think you just need stronger self-examination.
Yeah.
I think you just unconsciously slip in to little things. It's just like unconsciously slipping into scheduling a 6:30 up time and a 6:30 bath time, realizing that that's never been a procedure.
And then late to your bath.
You can't take off the front of it. You can only take off the tail end of it. And the sunning thing and other things, I think that, and sometimes familiarity. You've still got to, like if you're in a craft with the same group of people over a certain period of time, your vehicle will still slip into feeling a little liberty and taking someone into confidence or thinking it can get away with some little comment that it would not do with me.
And the countenance. Your countenance. Are you too relaxed? Are you too casual? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when I walk around our craft, when I'm doing something, I don't leisurely walk around the craft. I have yet to see those. In other words, we do things with energy. You know what I'm talking about? Your countenance, it starts mostly with your countenance. And your next level mind has to step in and make your vehicle move. You can't walk around with just your vehicle and not your mind intact. Do you know what I mean by that? We don't want everybody rushing around. We're not talking about rushing. We're talking about with some life in your vehicle. We're talking about
Being your best all the time, keeping that
alert,
brain.
being keen.
That's right.
And it's something that you waver back and forth in. When you have, in other words, I think it's a lack of understanding on your part. I don't think you know how to do it. Let's say that you're doing notes. That 3 people are doing notes. They want to do what's right, so they get up there and they sit up at the table and they pull out the notes and they read them, and everybody sits there, hopefully listening very intently, and then they try to come up with an answer. Instead of walking in someplace and just sitting down, sitting in a lounging position and nodding your head once in a while, like you would see humans do or something like that. I wish that there were words to describe it. The only thing I can say is that when we see you do this, like you're sitting here now, I'm reaching your mind. Your minds know what I'm talking about. I can feel it. But when you're back in your craft away from links and away from retreat, your minds are not there as strongly as they should be.
Or as consistently.
Or as consistently. They come in and out, in and out. What you want to do is keep them there all the time. When they're there all the time, you will become so sensitive toward what comes out of your mouth, your responses, your reactions to your classmates, that you can't hurt anybody. And believe it or not, what we're trying to do is get you to have your minds there all the time so that they will stay there. This is the purpose. As you gain strength and you keep your mind into your vehicle more, where you are using your mind to communicate, to do things around the craft, the more you do it, the more your mind will become there all the time, and you will never go back and forth. You will not waver any longer. Now, as you do this, as you build up this strength, you are doing your work all the time. But yesterday, I could not feel anybody doing any work. Now, and yes, they were very pleasant, but their minds were not in their vehicles.
All the way.
All the way. They were there a little bit. They were never gone completely. But that means that those individuals, because they were not doing things around the craft, then they relaxed. And even when we have nothing to do, like if we come into the evening and after being out all day doing things, and even I know my mind is never not active. It's always thinking about something. And those too, because of things that he said, and because of what I feel. Your mind should always be on some action. Always remember that it's everything. When you go down at night, you want to rest as a member of the next family.
The thoughts that you permit to go through your head, are they the thoughts that would go through the head of a member of the next level doing this task?
Now, again, I want to repeat, I'm not trying to put the ones down in the North Craft yesterday, but it made us realize that you probably do not understand what we're trying to get you all to do at this time. And hopefully this tape will help you to understand it. Because everybody there, they were very kind, and we didn't feel any bad vibrations. There was just a difference there, and we don't want to feel that difference. And we hope you all can. Okay? This is an hour and a half later, after the first tape. Same day, same place. We were informed after making the tape this morning of an incident that happened this week in the North Craft in the land. And do we want to tell what happened?
I think maybe it would be, I don't see why
And
not.
it disturbed Links an awful lot, especially since we didn't know about it after it happened until we were told about it from some individuals here at retreat.
The report we got was it happened on Monday or Tuesday, and this is Friday, and we don't understand why we didn't hear about it. Go ahead.
Right, which we feel like when something like this happens, it should be considered an emergency in this day and time, simply because actions like this confuses us considerably, plus the fact that it makes Links feel like sometimes that Links lives in an illusion of thinking that we're making progress, when in reality we're not, simply because of some individuals is choosing not to exercise their own minds and try to keep their vehicles under control, plus the fact that you all think you have to shelter Links, which in a sense is very deceitful, because of the fact that you don't need to protect Links in this way.
Or you certainly shouldn't think that, even though we haven't yet told you what occurred, when we do tell you, you'll understand what we're saying. You certainly shouldn't let it grow stale or think that it's insignificant. Like we think it was probably very significant to you when it occurred at the time. Hopefully it was significant. And you didn't know quite what to do about it, and you kind of let it die. And we weren't even told about this incident because of the incident. It came up in discussing something else, which even throws us a little further off because we wonder why you wouldn't consider something like this incident significant enough to let us know immediately. And if you had not let us know, like let's say you didn't call us, then certainly a note should have been written right away, and it should arrive with the next notes if you didn't feel like it was important enough to call us. But here it is Friday, and we have received no note from set
And we were
3.
even over in the Northcraft yesterday, and not a
Yes.
person mentioned it.
No one in the Northcraft where this incident occurred said anything about it. You know, and I'm
Or
going to...
even the people who were involved in it
Didn't say
didn't
anything
even
about
write a note or say to us, goodness, I sure lost control of my vehicle, and responded in a way that I'm terribly ashamed of. This is what's worse than anything.
I want to go one step further. To also, we realize that this is not that we need it, but verification, again, of how closely you're monitored. Because even though we didn't get the particulars of what was said, we just gave you a long tape this morning on this kind of thing, and how we had felt like in our visit to the Northcraft that even though they were very pleasant to us for the time that we were there, that something was way off and way down from where it should be. And they could reflect on that and think, well, during the time Lynx was here, everything was great. And yet Lynx felt, in other words, Lynx knew about this incident, but we did not know the particulars of the incident. Our minds knew. But we did not know the particulars. We knew it so much that we rushed to Austin and sat down in that craft and talked to be sure that we were not in trouble. And according to indications that we got from the individuals there was no significant trouble. Now, when you hear the incident that you're about to hear, we consider it serious trouble. And
it makes us wonder what else is going on that you all are covering up.
yes, because
See
it's a
what I'm
Watergate,
saying?
as far as we're concerned. It's a cover-up.
In other words, it's strictly a cover-up. You all weren't trying to protect Lynx. I mean, you might think you were, but you weren't. In other words, you were trying to protect yourself. And you've got to realize that you can't do things like that. You can't cover up things in the next level. It has to go through the channels. When something happens that can upset the craft so much, what happened in the Northcraft, then it has to be reported, because it affected everybody. Like Glenn Odie even said he was shaking the rest of the day, practically.
I've been shaking since I heard about it this morning.
And I have too. We fixed our experiment, and I just feel like it's
Almost
right in the
choked on
glove of my stomach. Now, if you think protecting us in that way, what's affecting me is the fact that we are doing this at this time. And when you see these, you have such an innocent look on your face, like I'm Mr. Goody-Goody and doing everything I'm supposed to do. In other words, it's a two-faced thing.
And
And I'm not
said
talking
this,
about everybody.
No.
I'm talking about the ones
individuals who would
involved in this.
participate in such a thing as this. And even some individuals at retreat this morning voiced Lynx that they almost hate the time between retreats, that they just hate having to go back to their craft and be subjected to certain things, and that 2 weeks they're just looking forward to being away from it and being at retreat and with Lynx again, because they know that here their heads are more where they should be, and they must feel some relief from it. Now, this is going to strike very hard on the individuals involved, and because we're going to lay it right on the table, and we also are not sure that this is the only thing of this sort, like he said earlier, that is going on. But we cannot, this is not Lynx talking, this is saying you cannot, the next level does not tolerate this kind of activity. The only way they can tolerate it is by saying, well, if you insist upon not getting enough control to keep things like this from happening, then we'll have to put you in a circumstance where others won't be subjected to this, or you won't be subjected to a provocation or things that would cause you to slip to this degree.
Well, actually, if you think about it, I mean, if you're thinking in this way, which is not the right way to think, but if you're thinking this way, that I'm only having trouble because I have this vehicle, and once I lose this vehicle, I won't have this trouble, then you're not thinking right.
You're not doing your job.
In other words, you're just coasting. You're sitting and waiting for the craft to come get you, and your grace will be your mind, which is mind growth and mind strength. You're just spinning your wheels. You're wasting your time. In other words, we don't like the craft to be upset. If there are one or two individuals who are upsetting the craft only, then we don't know whether to confine them to an area of the craft away from others or to ask them to leave.
Or to simply take all duties away from them that would cause them to interrelate with others.
You
so
see what
that,
we're saying? Because we don't want our minds, we don't want Glenody shaking the rest of the day. We don't want ourselves shaking or being upset over it. We don't want any of you to. And we're not asking anybody to leave, but we're saying we're getting to the stage now that we don't want to have to have our time wasted on two individuals, or three or four, however many there are, who are keeping everything so unpleasant in the craft that in other words, they're refusing to do anything about their task. They're goofing off. It's as simple as that. And it isn't fair to the rest of you. How hard do we try very hard to make things pleasant for you all. But we can't stay in the craft with you and do it. We're hoping that you will take what we give you and try to make things pleasant for each other. I could not function in an unpleasant circumstance. My mind is in so strongly that it just can't function. And Doe couldn't either. We would just melt. Or wilt would be the word. And you are not getting stronger in this way that you can receive things. In other words, you are getting more like your next level man. And the ones of you who were affected so strongly about this incident, you should be happy to know that you've grown to be that way. But certainly you don't want to be happy to have it proven to you every other day by an incident like this, right? So,
shall we ask Glenody to relate the incident?
Okay. We're going to ask Glenody because he was actually involved in the circumstance. So we're twisting his arm and asking him to do it for us.
Yeah. Calls now clearly. Some other things.
Wait just a second.
I remember it, I guess it was Monday, and it came in the lab in the morning to make cereal, and Alex Odie was fixing the cereal, and he apparently felt like they wanted to hurry up the cereal, so he put the lid on over the pot to bring it back to a boil quickly. And Cody came in the lab, and in sort of an abrupt manner, questioning manner, said, "I don't think we should be doing that." And if I remember right, Alex Odie said things like, well, you always come in and assume that somebody's doing something for a wrong reason instead of a right reason. Why can't you just assume that I'm doing this for a good reason? And that it's not your place to correct everyone. And then Cody came back with some of the things about how it wasn't Alex Odie's place at this time to make any suggestions or take any initiative or to remind Cody of what his place was. And then, if I remember right, Alex Odie said that you better watch what you're saying or I'm going to deck you. I swear to God, I'll deck you right now, because at this point I have nothing else to lose. I have nothing to lose by doing it. And Cody responded, I can't remember exact words, but he said, you better not tell me something like that. And he used the word fucking in the sentence. I can't remember exactly what the sentence was. That word just threw me to hear classmates talking about decking each other and using words like that. And Press Odie and I were in the lab and we were trying to calm things down a little, and at that point I think they started getting control of their vehicles. And, the situation just sort of became more calm. The situation never really resolved, but it stopped being at that level of vibration. It was just sort of tapered off. It wasn't resolved, but it just sort of dropped.
You can understand why we feel the way we do about this incident. None of you need to be subjected to something like this. And not even the two that were involved in it. It's definitely beneath them, and in my mind there's a lot to lose.
That kind of talk should have been so upsetting that that the two who slipped should have immediately said, I don't know what in the world has come over me that I would say such things as this, and should have both individually have written notes to Lynx, letting Lynx know how they had slipped so severely, in a sense let their teachers down, their class down, in a circumstance like that. To this moment, we have received no note from either one of those, nor have we received any note from Satellite 3 that this incident occurred. And what disturbs me is how that could occur and seem to be so insignificant with those kinds of vibrations happening in your lab. Now, if you think that when older members, when you get out of here and this task is over, your next level vehicle requires control. It's not the kind of vehicle you have now, but it requires control, and it requires constant manipulation and constant control. And you can't, like T said, just think, well, I can't do so much with this vehicle, and once in a while it just gets beyond control. If it gets beyond control, it's because your mind is receding, and you're either letting the mind recede or choosing to recede because you don't want to deal with the vehicle any longer. This is a possibility. Now, but mainly you should know that this kind of thing is not insignificant. It is extremely significant. Now, the only thing we can do for you when something like this occurs is make circumstances to try to prevent it from occurring again. And the only thing that...
Let me add one more thing before we get into that. And that is the two individuals involved in this owe the class an apology. In other words, they should suffer so badly because of this incident that when that evening when everyone was back into the craft, they should have asked for a meeting
Absolutely.
and apologized, because they know that everybody's going to hear about it. Especially if it's that three people, because it's, in a sense, it's their place to write notes. And not that that three people are gossips, I'm not saying that. But the sad three people will know about it. And because they will talk about it to find out what they should do about it. Whether they should write a note to Links or call Links or what. And in other words, it won't stop with just the 2 or 3 individuals who were in the lab at that time. It involves all of us. So in a sense, they needed to be so concerned about upsetting the class that they should have apologized to the class and apologized to Links. Because here we think you're right behind us, and we turn around and see that you're not behind us. And it is, now, don't think for 1 minute we're judging every one of you by that incident, because we're not. We're using it in order to help you to understand that if something, even in a minor way, that was a very severe thing. And we hope, we don't really feel like it happens very often. We hope it hasn't happened. But I think there are some minor things like that that are happening.
If there are, we should know about them.
And we should know about them.
If we don't know about them, you're going to get comfortable with it. And slowly they will increase until this kind of thing occurs again.
It'll become a way. And you think that's the way. It'll become a habit. And so we're asking that you let us know anytime it happens.
Now we know why we rushed to Austin. And yet when we sat down with the group there and these two were involved, it wasn't even brought to our attention.
It didn't even appear that it bothered
So
us.
it meant that they had already dropped it from being significant. They either hoped that we never learned of it, or we said, like, is anything, we even talked to one of the individuals privately and said, is there anything disturbing you? Is there what? And none of this surfaced. So it must mean that they think this kind of thing can occur and it doesn't mean anything, and that they can get away with it. Well, it isn't so. And thankfully it isn't so, because they don't need to be subjected to this themselves, nor others subjected to this. You have to believe that control is possible. If you don't believe that control is possible, we will slowly start letting all of your efforts, just one by one, just slowly slip back to worse than they were before you ever began self-correction. Now, we first of all, let's just take a step at a time. We want to be objective about it, but we're obviously alarmed by it, and it doesn't mean that T&O have lost control, but we know that this kind of thing must be serious and it must be stopped, and that it cannot be tolerated in craft. So what we want to do initially is take some steps to not let the circumstance occur, like don't we want to maybe...
Well, we want to eliminate problems like those that are circumstances that could cause problems, right?
Yeah.
And over the months, we've heard different things that have occurred and how problems have arisen under certain circumstances. So we feel like if we take Cadoti out of the lab totally, off of lab duty, and we know that it'll make you short-handed, but I think if it would help Cadoti to be taken away from the circumstances that can cause his vehicle trouble, then it might make things more pleasant for everybody else, right?
And him.
And him also. And also we'd like for Cadoti and Alex Sodi both we want Cadoti to do what Alex Sodi is supposed to
Is
do.
supposed
and
to be
that's
doing.
not to make any suggestions, not to instigate anything.
Or make any criticisms of others, or point out to others that they aren't doing procedures.
And we also
Now, I want you to understand that this is has to apply to both of them.
Right. And we also want to relieve them of their SAT 3 duties for right now. In other words, we feel like this is the only, you all don't need to be babied any longer, right? We don't feel like you do. So, actually we're being very lenient.
I feel like we are
In
too.
other words, next level would take away everything, all your duties. And not because they punish you, but they feel like you have not grown to be able to do them in the most right way.
Well, your punishment would be
Now,
the
this is
suffering
your
that you would impose upon yourself, because they merely are concerned with function. How can the craft function and your classmates function if you are raping them? Because to me, this was verbal assault. This was disturbing the vibration. So it wasn't something you were doing to yourself. It's something you're doing to someone else and upsetting them. And both individuals in this circumstance were equally and totally out of place by letting anything stair-step to the degree of those kind of vibrations and words exchanged.
First, what harm is there in other words, no individual follows procedures to the letter, so much so that they need to question every little bitty thing. You understand that? In other words, you don't want to be so picky as to question every tiny little thing. Like,
Well, you can question it in your own mind.
let's use the incident and say how it could have happened. Alex Sodi put the top on the cereal. Cadoti comes in and says, "Oh, I see the top's on the cereal. Is there some reason why we're doing that since we don't normally put the top on the cereal?" Right? And he could say it in the right way. And Alex Sodi's response could have been, "Well, I wanted to try to bring it to you. Weren't around at the time when this happened, and I was trying to, but not you weren't around when I wanted to do it. But since you were not around at the time, and I was trying to speed up the cereal because we were running a little bit late, I thought maybe it seemed okay to put the top on so it could come to a boil more quickly."
Right, or I know I shouldn't have done it without a check partner,
Right.
and I should have waited until you got here, and the reason I was doing it was thus and so.
Okay, now all of that could have been avoided. And then Cadoti could have said, "Well, sounds like a good idea." Or he could have said, "Oh, well, okay." You know, or I don't think instead of pouncing on somebody.
They were obviously, their vehicles were both prepared to get rid of some hostility that was lingering in them.
In other words,
this
using
wouldn't have
procedures
occurred.
in that way is a force.
To use the procedures as the tool to vent your hostility.
Or
Now,
to put somebody down, or to get somebody in their place. You're just and if it's happening, then you want to correct it.
Now they obviously think they can get away with it, or we would have.
Like you said, he had nothing to lose.
That's right. They think they can get away with it. Now I'm talking. The vehicle thinks it can get away. Thus far, it has gotten away with it, because we haven't heard about it. We've heard no apology even from the mind using the vehicle. Now we want to make this big. It's not even, believe it or not, as big as it would be if you were sitting in a spacecraft. Not that they would get, they probably wouldn't say 1/10 of what we've said. They would just say, okay, you go there, and you go here, and you wouldn't hear from them again. as far as tasks that would cause you to need to interrelate with others. Now, don't take for granted that when you get back to the spacecraft, that since you're not in these vehicles, that everything is automatically smooth sailing, and there's no yes,
people there.
and that there's no effort that will need to be exerted in the areas of self-control and diplomacy and all, because that's not so. It's just among advanced individuals who don't vibrate on these animal levels. But they are advanced individuals that have their own level of things to deal with regarding self-control and discipline and function.
The main thing you want to know what is the human, what's in the human vehicle and what's in your mind. And I don't know, right now, I don't know if it's possible for your mind to adopt some characteristics of this vehicle, but I don't know why it couldn't. You see what I'm saying? In other words, I would have to think about that.
I don't think it could, because it
It
certainly
seems
wouldn't like
like,
them.
you know, there's a new movie out where it's about Tarzan and how Tarzan is born or raised with apes, and then he goes back to England and tries to live a life of an Englishman and a human, and with ape characteristics, which I'd have to see it to.
We're you all are going to have to see this picture,
Yeah.
because there's a very good reverse comparison you can make to the task that you're doing.
Right, but we don't want you all to see that the next time, because
Okay.
there's something else we want you to see the next time, don't you think?
Okay.
Didn't we?
No, it doesn't matter. Sure.
But it makes you sick at your stomach, really, when you see what happens. At least it did mine. And we have viewed it, and for the prospect of you all seeing it, but there was another one that we think you might enjoy after hearing this tape. You might need something to cheer you up for, which instead of making you sick. But the thing of it is, let's say that there is a possibility that the mind can adopt some of the characteristics of the vehicle. Let's just say, let's suppose, okay? So if there is that possibility, then which ones do you want your mind to adopt? You certainly don't want them to adopt the worst characteristics, because then when you get to the next level, no one's going to tolerate you. Tolerate you meaning no one will want to work with you. They won't tell you that, but they will be conveniently busy every time you're given a task. You see what I'm saying? And remember, we're using words that we can only express on this level. And when we say tolerate, or I mean, those are all human words, and therefore we aren't capable of expressing ourselves the way we would in the next level, because they don't use words like tolerate, because they don't tolerate. They have no reason to tolerate anything. In other words, the word wouldn't even apply in the next level, because nothing happens to cause you to tolerate. However, I'm sure they tolerate the things that happen with the humans. You know, but with each other it wouldn't be that way. Now, this isn't goody-goody talk. In other words, it isn't a saccharin or a sweet, oh, everybody is so goody-goody, and oh, it's just disgusting, you know. It isn't that way at all, because you're going to be with individuals who are strong minds, and they don't take into consideration what comes out of their mouth is going to offend you. In other words, because that doesn't happen.
And they're not trying to offend.
And
But
they
you could
don't
hear
offend
conversations that could sound extremely argumentative if you were at a level of taking them as argumentative.
Right.
Because they're trying to get all the facts out and trying to know everything that they need to know about it.
And if your mind is capable of being hurt, then you will be hurt quite a bit once you get to the next level. So therefore, you certainly don't want that characteristic to mutate from your vehicle to your mind, because your mind doesn't have that characteristic of being hurt. And you all see that? So you don't have to worry about what's going to happen in the next level. You've been there. You like it so much you want to get back. So it isn't an unpleasant place. Okay? Now, we don't want to hurt the two individuals that were involved in this incident. And it could have been something that needed to be brought out for the benefit of everybody. But we feel very strongly that the steps that we're taking will help these individuals to protect them from circumstances that can cause it to happen again until they can get in better control of their vehicles. And we hope that they will work on it. Not only them, but everybody. And we hope that they will follow through on the steps that we suggested for doing for something that happened like this.
And if there are other such incidents as this, we've got to know about them for your sake, because we've got to get them corrected. I'm talking about that have occurred or that do occur from this time forward. Because it can't, you can't expect to move forward and work and live in vibrations where once in a while you have to stoop to these kind of feelings. Alexodian Cadot can't live with the kind of vibrations that they were subjected to, their own vibrations and the vibrations of each other. They can't possibly. If this kind of thing occurs with any frequency at all, there's a schizophrenia, a gutter curb thing going on that he's talked about many times of just letting your vehicle get away with things and then being sorry later. We do not think that it is impossible for any classmate to have sufficient control or adequate enough control to prevent upsetting the whole apple cart or upsetting their classmates or the function of the craft. We do know that at times your vehicles might act in a way that you seemingly have very little control over them. And even when you will exert the most effort that you have, you may have very little control over them. But even at that point, then you should be saying to your teachers, I'm not getting control. I've seen evidence here that I didn't get control. What can I do so that I'm not subjecting my lack of control to others or having them suffer because of that period? And give me some things to work on that will help me regain control or to understand how to endure it in a way that it won't affect others. Do you all understand that? But it can't be just loose affecting, if there are certain horses in the pack that because of their genetic structure at times are uncontrollable, then they have to have special attention and special ways to give them special help and also not subject to the herd. this doesn't mean that maybe the mind is occupying it is any worse or any better, but it's just there's a practical element here that has to be worked out. Okay? We're going to add a little something here.
How could you all handle a circumstance like this as a group while you were waiting to hear from Links? Can any of you all say something?
Well, I think we have a procedure and help one meeting for the individuals involved, or the crew even.
Okay, and what would you say to them? What would you say to those two individuals?
Van Sodi said that we would have a health wanted meeting for those individuals. And T said, what would you say to them?
What would you say to them?
I think I would inclined to say we want to know how we can help you work this out, or how we can help protect you.
No. You know what I'd say? I'd say we don't feel like this kind of action. Our craft deserves this kind of action, nor the ones in this craft deserve this kind of action.
These words and vibrations.
And this kind of vibration. You might not be aware of it, but you have upset me quite a bit. My day has been very shaky because of this circumstance. In other words, this is the time when you don't want to put them down, but you also want to say in a kind way, a direct statement like this. You see what I'm saying? Now this applies only at a meeting. It doesn't apply when you're talking to individuals in person.
No, and you couldn't say that unless you felt like those others who were present felt the same way. Because then they should each chime in and say, that's true. I didn't want to say anything about it, and I'm reluctant to say anything about it now, but it was very difficult for me to recover from an incident like this. I want to repeat, since we're back on tape, of what should have happened by the two involved. They should have.
And they should.
And they still should have. It should have made such. They should have felt so bad about what came out of their mouths that they should have written a note to Links, not only apologizing but asking help on what can they do, since they're obviously not getting better control of their vehicles in circumstances like this, and how can Links help them be in a circumstance where they don't hurt the craft in this way and involve lab duties and other things with their lack of control. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand this and take this personally. Now, let's really talk to next level minds, because a next level mind would say to their teacher, it's obvious that I am still at times out of control. And now that doesn't mean that you're going to be condemned, because this is what you should do, is let us know that you recognize that in spite of your efforts, you're out of control of the vehicle. And you're saying, how can you help me handle this? Or what can we do? I want to do, your attitude should be, I want to do whatever it takes not to let my moments of lack of control upset the craft and everything else. In other words, there are ways to handle ornery horses and dogs, to use that comparison again, are ones that, because of their genes, that there's a limit to how much control you can get out of them. Even though you've tried every trick in the book, but you still have to learn to be diplomatic with your vehicle. We've taught you every trick in the trade of how to handle your vehicle in order to get the best responses from it, or the best control. And there are always other tricks that, if necessary, that we will get help in giving you. But the urgency is here. We received no call for help in this circumstance. The circumstance was severe. The vibrations were intolerable to next level class. And we have got to see that circumstances like this do not reoccur. And this is not threatening the individuals that lost control. It's just saying that we have to have a practical method of not being subjected to this, not letting even them be subjected to their own vehicles that can lose control in moments like this.
And we don't want you all to use such language as crap. Isn't that what was said? Pollyanna crap, isn't that what you said? Huh? Garbage? Is that what he did he really say garbage? Because sometimes as it came across in my mind just then. Okay. We don't want you making fun of your classmates if they're trying to do next level way by calling them Pollyanna garbage or something like that. It sounds to me like we've got an awful lot of work in this way, in this regard to do, but I believe if we all work together